that, but I wanted to make sure that we could cover some things today that you can take back and talk with your internal team or with your web developer, or whoever maintains your website day one, and these are things that will hopefully be able to improve your website, improve your rankings in search engines, and do that magical thing we all like to do, which is make more money and get more business. So the challenge we all face is that there are more devices, there are more things, there are more ways for people to find you online. Some of those things may be things you control, your website or a blog or your social media channels, but some of those things are things you don't control. They're things that are review sites, or they're things that other people are talking about you or your company, and you don't have a lot of control over that. That's a little bit scary. What we can focus on, though, is what you do control, what you own, and this is where it becomes very much like traditional marketing. So web seems like a big confusing thing to a lot of people. You know, you've got your phone, you get on Twitter or Facebook, and you know what you know, but when it comes to web and code and things that are really technical, the nerdy stuff, that's stuff that can be sometimes scary, but also can really be your best friend. And we don't have to think of it in a way that is any different than a lot of traditional marketing practices. So some key takeaways for today: the basics still apply. This isn't going to be mind-blowing. Hopefully these are things that are very translatable, and again, can be day one type things you can go back and start talking about with whoever maintains your website today and make your website better. What we really want to focus on, and what search engines focus on, what Google and Bing and Yahoo focus on, is making it easy on the user. So it starts to shift our mentality from it's all about us and our company, which we really do want it to be when they dig down to some of the really deep level pages on our website, but we need to make it easy for them. Make it easy to find out how to get in touch with you, how to use your website and get valuable information from it. And then being able to stay relevant and up to date. So there's a concept that content is king, and really what that means is that the content on your website needs to serve the user, it needs to be kept up to date and refreshed frequently so that you can bring in more people, bring in more traffic, and hopefully convert some more leads. All of this matters because of a lot of nerdy 400 things that we're not going to break down because, again, they told me I have 20 minutes. So Google, Bing, and Yahoo, everybody uses those at some level, whether you are based in North America or international. If you are in an international market, you probably use a lot of different search engines, but with Google sharing the bulk of search engine traffic globally, regardless of the country that you're in, we usually focus on Google first, but any other search engine, all of these basics will still apply. There are up to, and sometimes even more than, 400 things that they look at to rank your website. Don't worry about that 400 number, just know that there are a lot of things that are there, and we can start to bucket them into big groups and hopefully take out big chunks of those 400 and optimize your website in ways that will see bigger gains more quickly. But it also matters because of some of those other things, the other places that people are talking about you and you don't have control or maybe don't have as much insight to what they're saying about you. So all of those social networks, actually, if any of you were here yesterday and saw my colleague Noel's presentation, this slide might look familiar because we pulled the same graphics. Optimization, efficiency, it works everybody happier. So we're going to dive in because I'm now 4 minutes in according to this timer and I don't want to go long. We're going to make this pretty simple. Focus on how your customers find you and how you want them to find you. And those could be two different things, or they could be two very similar things. If they work together and they're very similar, then you're probably a little bit ahead of the game. But if they're finding you in ways that are not how you want them to find you, then we can look at this conversation a little differently and make sure that they're finding you for things that you want them to find you for, and not finding potential negative reviews or sites that you would love to be on, but you're not for whatever reason. We want to make sure they're finding you for things that you'd like them to find you for. So everybody knows what that thing is on the right-hand side, and that is a search result in any number of search engines. They all pretty much look the same. What you may or may not have known is that your website and the way your website is set up can literally influence every single word within that search result. And as we know, if we take our hats off from the industry and we're here at the trade show, if you think about yourself as a consumer, what you read on those words can influence whether you click on it or not. Where that ranks on the page can influence whether you click on it or not. And that's how we're going to think about this, is making those words, making those things attractive enough to click on it. And then once they get there, let's keep them on your website. So of those 400 things, about 10% of those 400 things are made up of this meta information. Now, we're not going to dive into it again because it's a little bit nerdy, but that meta information is the stuff that builds these results. So you need to know or be able to tell your developer, whoever maintains your website, we got to focus on some of this meta information. They can make the code work. You can work on the marketing terms and the things that are going to make people click on that result. So about 10% of those things, of those 400, are this meta information and how your site is coded and put together. So I wanted to make meta information a little bit easier to understand and digest because, again, if you don't know code, that's fine, but you need to be able to tell someone, hey, we need to focus on these things. So this side is meta information, it's code, it's some of the more technical pieces. But let's think of it like a story. Let's think of it like, you know, the best book you've ever read. And I have to admit that I don't read a lot of books, so this was a tough analogy, but I felt like it would resonate with more people than just me. So book titles, table of contents, summary. When you read a good book or a well-structured book or a white paper or you know, anything that has multiple chapters and pages, when it's broken out well, when it's organized well, you know where you are anytime you flip a page or you go to a new chapter. You know that a character that you read about in page 1 is the same character in page 100, and how did they evolve. So we can start to think of things like books. And if you start to think of things like books, then you can write that information. You can start to put together the words and the terminology to do this with your book title, with your table of contents, with a summary, with chapter titles. And your website can be structured in that way and get you very far ahead. And you can let the nerds like me worry about how to make it work well and make it look pretty online and make it good in terms of code. This next piece, the second piece that I want to talk about is, it's a really long title, but it works. You know, depending on how much you've gotten into some, you know, different marketing concepts and things, the idea that everybody needs to see things multiple times to remember what it is you want them to do. So I live in Ohio, and every year in election season, it is the worst place in the world to live because Ohio seems to always be the center of all these election things, and your breaks in your television program and your commercials are all about elections locally, and there's some really bad commercials nationally, the presidential elections. We just get inundated with these things. But by the end of it, we know what the candidate is telling us. We know what they want us to do. So they've told me and everybody else in Ohio that despises them the main message a lot of times, and hopefully we're able to retain that. What this gets to is the same thing, again, trying to make this very straightforward and make it relatable to what you guys are all hopefully used to doing anyways, is an easy, straightforward call to action. They've seen your search result, they've read your web page, you want them to now be a lead, you want them to potentially be a business source for you. They need an easy call to action. This is where we can start to get really specific and really unique to the user if we want to, or we can keep it very generic. If every web page that you have on your website simply said, click here, contact us, request a quote, whatever you want them to do after reading that web page, I guarantee you'll see an influx of leads and potential opportunities. Now, they may not all be the best, you'll have to still qualify them, but everybody wants to get to the end of something on a website and know what to do next. It might not be to give you more information, but they need to know what to do next. What page should they read next, or should they get in touch with you so that you can get some more information to them? So, quick, easy call to action checklist, because the call to action concept isn't new, but making it effective on the web is something that we can definitely focus on. Relevant and specific. Your homepage may not have the best call to action because it's a very generic. I've read the summary of the book. What do I do next? Well, I got to read a little bit more to know, do I want to work with this company? This is fun. I haven't seen this happen before. Do I want to work with this company? Is it somebody that I might want to do business with? So as you dig deeper into that book, you want to know a little bit more about, why do I want to keep going? Well, maybe you get to a point in that book where I know enough. Now I want to talk to somebody. I want to do business. So the deeper you get into your website, get a little bit more specific. Don't just say contact us, but fill out this form and I'll send you the best white paper in the world, or fill out this form and I'll get back to you in 12 hours. Give them a little bit more information, a little bit more meat to the message. Make sure that they become a little bit stronger customer, and then when you get that information in your inbox, you know that they've clicked on a very specific call to action. They might be a little bit more qualified of a lead for you to do some follow-up with. And the last piece that I want to make sure that we talk about is being able to stay relevant. And this is the idea that content is king. The window and door industry, I love all of you guys. I love Quanex. We work with them on a number of things. But nobody in this industry has really stepped up and owned it at a national level, at an international level, and even at a local level. And really what's interesting is when you get, especially on a local or a regional level, that's where I think everyone here can really step up and own it. And there's not much to owning it other than your time. And I know that just by saying that, it's a little bit cliche in and of itself, but the fact that everyone here has a product, a service, something that they can talk about, you put that online, and a lot of people let it sit. And that's what is now considered just kind of bad. It's not making content king. It's not keeping yourselves relevant. It's not talking about industry trends and new products and new services you have, because I got my website, it's checked off the list. Well, if you want to come up in those search results and continue to come up in those search results, another big chunk of that 400 things is fresh, relevant, unique content. Everybody can talk about, I use the very generic example, everybody can talk about a single hung window, a double hung window. What makes yours different? Why do they want to do business with you? What's the customer service angle, or something that's a little bit more unique to your company or your business that separates you from everybody else? Because everybody at their core makes the same thing. You have to find that differentiator and be able to stay relevant with it. So the idea that content is king is hopefully very simple to execute again. It's, you know, you've got a piece of content, you went out and shot a great video or commercial, you published a blog post, you put a post up on Facebook or Twitter. Don't just let it live there. Put it in 10 different places. Take that message and put it in as many places as you can that makes sense. And that's kind of the checkpoint here, is just because you have a message and content is king and all of these different things can help you rank better and get more leads and more opportunities through your website, doesn't mean that it should, but you've got this message now, and just to put it in one spot is kind of doing yourself a disservice. Get it out there in multiple platforms and channels. And this is where it can go beyond your website. So web and doing all this coding and getting an agency involved or someone to manage this, it costs money. But there's a lot of free channels out there as well. So YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and other social media networks that, again, it's time and that's an investment and that's some dollars, but it's not an investment to get that up and running. And these are all great platforms to put that same message out on, because now not only will your website start to rank, but you might get a couple other rankings on that first or second page, and that adds credibility. We take off our industry hat and we think of a consumer. If I see 5 or 6 results on that page for a company or for a service, they've done some work, and you know, for the most part, we all just assume that that first page of Google results is accurate, and it helps us. But you can start to populate that page and kind of get that same effect. So this 10%, as I said, you know, how do we start to bucket out these 400 plus things? We got that 10%, that's your website code, that's the stuff that makes your website work and look pretty and keep people coming back. But the content on your site is another 45%, and I'm really bad with math, so I'm not going to figure out what a 45% of 300 or whatever that is. But that's how important the content piece can become. Your website doesn't have to be the biggest, flashiest, most impressive thing in the world. It doesn't have to, you know, talk to every single customer in the world, but if you're putting up new, fresh, unique content, Google will like you a lot more, and Google's a computer. Google's very technical, so the more content it can find and come up and put up in search results, the better for you. So this is where the customer piece comes in, because content is great, but if all we do is talk about ourselves and become very promotional, we're all smart. Your consumers are smart. They're going to see through that. They're going to go check other sources and make sure that what you're saying on your website isn't just your brochure regurgitated online. They want to see information that's relevant to them. So we get into the concept of one-to-one marketing, or very unique and individual messages for your different types of users. So thinking about how your users are finding you and how you want them to find you is where this can come back in. So answering questions, so FAQ sections or blog posts, things that can add value to what you're talking about from a product level or a service level, enhance that experience. And as soon as you start to bring in new and unique content, well, now you can add new and unique calls to action, because it's not a product page. It's a page about a certain challenge or a solution or a case study, something that adds a little bit more value to their education process. When they do call you, when they do submit that form, now you've got a little bit deeper and more qualified lead to follow up with. They want to feel like it's talking to them. You know, you want to feel like, I go buy a new car, you're giving me a car that is exactly what I want, and I'm going to be really happy about my car purchase and go and brag about it on Facebook, on Twitter. I'm going to tell my friends and use that word of mouth marketing, the thing that we kind of all know and love anyways, and tell them about this great experience I just had. It's the same thing with content. If it's unique, if it's talking to them, they're going to share it. They're going to talk about it with their friends and their colleagues and the other industry associates that they know, and add credibility to your message, because now I've got somebody outside of the company validating what you've just told me. The companies that win search engine rankings and results, they get the most leads, they get the most word of mouth, they get the most traffic, because they do this, regardless of industry. There are studies and everything that you could potentially pile on to talk about this with, that companies that win search rankings and get clicks and get people to their website and get leads really invest in keeping their content fresh and reusing the same pieces of content over and over again. So supposedly this is easy, right? I've hopefully made this seem somewhat easy. But it's, like I said, it's not hopefully too different than what we know about good marketing and sales practices anyways. It's the basics. Making sure that your users know exactly what you want them to do next, and then giving them a reason to come back because you give them good, fresh, unique content all the time. But this is a lot. So you can't go back and tackle this all in day one. Hopefully this will give you some talking points to go and think about in day one. But it does need to be an ongoing process, because Google loves to say, we liked this site and we ranked it #1 today, but tomorrow we might rank it #3. Google changes, search engines change all the time, so you do have to stay up with it. It does have to be a little bit of investment if you want to win search results. But the basics that I just talked about, even though we said, hey, it's the top 3 things you need to go for 2015, they've been the basics for the last 5 years, and really from a trend standpoint, will be the basics for the next 5 years. So if you do this and you make some of that investment now, all you're doing is building a foundation that will only serve to benefit you moving forward. Sometimes you do need to find the right partner or an internal team to work with, but that investment will certainly pay off when you start to rank higher, when you start to get more leads and more contacts in. And you can chunk these things into pieces, parts. You're not going to tackle all 400 things or that 10% and that 45%. You can't do it all at once. You're going to need to build. Companies that we've worked with that have done this have inevitably seen those results, and then, yeah, I'll go invest some more. I'll go make the effort and the time and the financial investment to make this work for me a little bit harder.